Good morning, everybody. My name is Mark Lenhard. I'm the president and CEO of the Wesleyan, and very thankful to be here today. As we do with all of these gatherings, I would like to pass it over to our Director of Spiritual Life, Michael Bartley, to open us with just some thoughts and prayers.
On my way in this morning, as I was driving here, I was listening to my mother on her grandpad singing. My mom has dementia, and my mom was singing a song called "Surround Me with Your Boundless Love." And I got to thinking that that's precisely what the Wesleyan is supposed to be about. Not only surrounding our residents with boundless love, but surrounding our teammates with boundless love. And one of my hopes for us in this time that we live in is that we learn what it means to talk about boundless love with each other. Let's take just a moment in prayer together, and then I'll step aside and Mark will take over. Let us pray. Eternal and gracious God, I just want to give you thanks for this collection of people. I want to give you thanks for our residents. I want to give you thanks for our teammates. Teach us what it means to be a people that love consistently and love thoroughly. Teach us what it means to follow you in all of our ways. Teach us to be your children. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Michael, thank you very much. The word repeatedly that I heard throughout that was the word thanks. I think depending on what you listen to, what you hear from people, sometimes people don't hear that word thanks right now because there's a lot that's going on in the world. But I will tell you that the team that you see in front of you, the team that you see each and every day, are thankful to be in service to this ministry, to be in relationship with you all, and are thankful for the fact that the Wesleyan is able to continue in the work that it does. Welcome to this next quarter meeting. There's a lot of information, and as I do with each iteration of the town hall meeting, I trim it back because there's a lot of information, but I would really of great value is the questions that are asked. And so I'm going to go through some things. Some of them may be repetitious. I know many of you stay connected with what's going on in the community and the world at large. There are many who don't. And so this message may be repetitious for some, but the intent is to connect with everybody. And just to give a little bit of a backdrop on things that are taking place throughout our organization. But then I want to make sure that we really do take the time to be present for the opportunity to answer questions and have a real live dialogue. And I know I'm thankful that we have residents that are with us. I know we have family members that'll be joining us. This is also being recorded, and so people will be able to talk about it later. The beautiful thing about this is not the only opportunity to ask questions. That opportunity is at all times. And so, in front of you, I will say we've got Georgianne Hewitt, our Vice President for Advancement. We have Kelly Getz, our Chief Compliance Officer. She's also filling in as our administrator, a return to home for Kelly over at our Wesleyan Assisted Living. And then, of course, Bethany Cisneros, our Chief Operating Officer. So these town hall meetings started back in 2018, and it's specifically scheduled as they are so that we can come to you after we have the opportunity to meet with our Board of Trustees, whom we continue to meet with, and just to kind of give you a general overview of the items that we talk about. I'll share with you just a little bit about about what we've talked about, but I want to give you maybe a little bit kind of a broader scope, because I think one of the things that we've talked about is we talk about the operations of the organization, the impact of the residents. Obviously, there were rate increases, how we're doing with staff, knowing the labor issues that are out in the market. There's just a lot of things going on. So I just want to kind of give just a general, kind of a brief overview of things, because this meeting really has become a little bit of a State of the Union. There was a question, as I did some research with regards to everything that's taking place in the world. There was a question that said, is COVID-19 just another large-scale shock? Is it just another one of those kind of blips in the road that grabs our attention and moves on? And it really isn't. It is an unprecedented global pandemic. It has had fundamental impacts on the financial and economic status of not only us as a community, but our country and our world. This is fundamentally different from previous financial and economic crises, such as the global financial crisis of 2007, 2008, and of course, the Great Recession that we experienced. This virus, this deadly virus, not only attacked the health of individuals, but it also affected the entire economy. It created financial stress in our markets, not seen since quite some time ago. The Federal Reserve did step in very quickly to apply lessons learned from that great financial crisis, that global financial crisis, but we haven't recovered as an economy in the U.S. even a year later. And so putting aside the shock value of it, the magnitude and scope of the interventions from all different areas, economically and socio and politically and psychologically and from a healthcare standpoint, all those things, they are going to have repercussions for some time to come, repercussions that we've not yet seen, but are experiencing right now. And so, you know, I go back to, they talk about the novel virus. There is a novelty to all these things that we're encountering. And with the newness of anything that comes new is that it's walking through it, it's making mistakes, it's trying to course correct. And these are all the things that we've had to do while also continuing to care the ministry that we have. Most recently, at the end of November, there was an epidemiological update from the World Health Organization, and it said, just in general, that globally the numbers of weekly COVID-19 cases, inclusive of both occurrence and also death, has continued to decrease over the last month. We actually ourselves saw this. We had a wonderful trend for almost 2 months, Kelly, maybe not quite 2 months, of going from red to orange. Of course, now we're back into red in Williamson County. Not unexpected, because of course there's the expected kind of surge around the holiday times with travel and people getting together. But still a bump nonetheless. In general, we have had stabilized case incidents really up until recently, but continue to see a rise in hospitalization, and actually have seen over really the last couple of weeks an increase of right at about 10% increase in hospitalization as a result of COVID-19. These are not some waning excuse me, numbers. The United States, as far as countries, still kind of tends to be the leader, right at about 50 million cases of COVID-19, followed behind by India, Brazil, the United Kingdom, and Russia. Now, the list of countries for new cases in the past 7 days really is about the same. Again, still, the United States is still in the lead, followed then by Germany, the United Kingdom, Russia, and Turkey. And so what has this done? This has caused people to kind of take a step back. It's caused the CDC and the World Health Organization to step back and talk about how they're classifying the variants that are out there. You know, they have variants that are being monitored. That's a most recent category that's been added. Variants of interest, variants of concern. There are lots of different categories, and a lot of it has to do with how the variants are interacting with the population as it exists, how virulent they are, how contagious they are, which can be two different things, and whether or not it places people at imminent risk, and we need to put our resources towards monitoring them or not. Of course, the Delta variant and all its variants, because there are subvariants to the Delta variant that are out there. And of course, there's all the others. If you're familiar with the Greek alphabet, they're pretty well represented. You know, we've got alpha, beta, gamma, delta, lambda, mu, Omicron now that we're looking at. It feels a little bit like being back in a fraternity in college. But what's most important is that these things are being monitored. And you know, I want to repeat what we've heard from some of the more stabilizing agents out in media, and that is not to panic. We have, as an organization, incredible infection control practices. Infection control practices, not only that we've been lauded for throughout our community, but actually where surveyors and investigators have come in to make sure we're compliant, they've actually borrowed policies and procedures from us to use in other communities. And so there may be policies and procedures that we would rather not to have to be engaged in, and I would tell you, Probably most of the ones that have restricted things, I would say everybody on screen, if not those that you don't see, would say, oh gosh, when we're ready, we'd love to roll them back. And everyone also understands the price and the restrictions that come along with that to safeguard our residents and our teammates. Now, beyond the healthcare concern, the pandemic has severely, again, as I've stated, disrupted the financial markets, and this has really impacted the economy worldwide. There have been extraordinary events that have prompted large monetary and fiscal policy interventions. This has spurred on a lot of academic research about what the long-term effect is going to be, not just the healthcare effect, but the effect of the economy. Because there's stimulus dollars and there's recovery dollars and there's an explosion of expense with regards to infection control practices and new innovation and technology. And what it's really created is an ongoing financial fragility throughout our country and other countries that really are unprecedented from prior economic crises. And so when you come back a little bit into the community, you think, okay, well, we are organizations that deal with people face to face. So even with our contractors and our vendors, the supply of our goods and services to us so that we can do what we do has been disrupted and in some instances even halted, impacting supply chains. And so, you had lumber was a great example. People are like, well, but you're not in the lumber business. Well, no, but as we do construction, as we do growth, as we do repairs, we go out to our providers. We went to go get lumber. People were sick, they weren't in the mills, they weren't cutting down the trees, they weren't processing it. And so, a 2x4 goes from, $1.97 to $7.48 each. And I'm just pulling numbers out, but they've gone up exponentially. And that really is analogous to what we saw in supplies. Just like we have supplies that have to come in, even something as basic as, say, infection control, wash and spray, and things of that nature. There have to be people in the factories producing it. There have to be people that are generating it, packaging it, storing it, delivering it, and those things have become few and far between. Then you add to that a level of, at the core of who we are, it is being face to face with the people that we serve, and even that has taken its toll because of people either being gone for being sick or possibly under the possibility of being sick, or because of the regulatory guidelines that we have that prevent people from being in front of people because there's the fear of being sick. I mean, there's a lot of issues there. And so that's had an extreme impact on the labor market. And so, again, here we are in 2021. And the U.S. economy, is still hurting. We've had an impressive vaccination process. I'm going to share some numbers with you in a minute. But despite that, there is, of course, still that fear and that hesitation, and it's required even more efforts for education. And I think that's been the hardest part, is the constant need for education with regards to what it is that we're doing and what the expectations are and how to proceed with them, and people still feel safe in a place that isn't just a place of work, but a place that we call home. And so, as we get closer to home, we see that hospitals and healthcare facilities are really facing catastrophic financial challenges. The American Hospital Association said, and this isn't an expense is substantially more, but the financial impact of revenue was a loss over the last year of over $202 billion. And that doesn't talk about the 30+% increase in labor expenses and the supply chain issues and the increased expense in supplies and such that go along with it. This pandemic has been a major contributor. Everything from personal protective equipment for our healthcare workers, our visitors, our family members, but also just basic hospital equipment and sanitizing equipment have been in short supply. And that senior service communities, and we have a full range of services. Every one of them, whether it's home and community-based services, independent living, assisted living, or skilled nursing, every single level has had to step up in the services provided, the supplies that are there, and that and the onerous nature of the PPE and the routine testing and the staff support and the sophistication, not to mention the reporting to a variety of different agencies, has been the confluence of events that has really added to the challenges that we see, both in labor and finances. Over the last 20 months, that same healthcare association stated that census had dipped about 1.3% each month. So in the aggregate, over the last 20 months, representing a loss of 26% in overall census. The Wesleyan, not immune to a reduction in census, didn't experience that kind of reduction. But when you're a community that runs at 98, 97, 96%, when census goes to 88%, that's still a big change for us. And so that certainly has had an impact. And it's fortunate, we've kind of turned that corner. We have less than a handful of apartments in assisted living. We have about a handful of apartments in independent living. We've actually experienced more concerns about people want service units and we don't have any available. That's a different challenge, but we've weathered it well, but we've not been unscathed. And I think probably one of the greatest issues that we have is that concern of the impact that it's had on our teammates. And I will say that has been something that we have heard repeatedly from our family members, our residents, their leadership, their supervisors, and from the frontline staff. There is an incredible psychosocial impact of this pandemic. Starting with our residents, I know that the quarantine, isolation, social distancing was one of those go-to practices, and we still believe to be a solid and effective practice to prevent or curtail the spread of virus, and it has unintended consequences. We as a community and as a ministry, our focus isn't to socially isolate. It's really just the opposite. What is then the hallmark of who we are as an organization is confounded by these best practices. It is something that has created a deep well of sadness, I know, amongst our residents, certainly amongst our family members and our teammates. Teammates who haven't been able to work with one another from different buildings or go at different parts of the campus, but also to see residents or have interactions with residents, maybe having a meal or being at a special activity that they would otherwise have been able to participate in. And so we're still feeling, not only feeling the repercussions of that, but it's on top of the anxiety and fear. And let's be honest, I mean, people don't like to hear the word, but the depression that comes from the kind of the onerous nature of where this pandemic has placed us. And I'll say this, and I'll say this again later, but we have got to learn to live not around the pandemic, but through it. And just like other crises that our country, that our world, that we have faced, is to find our way to live through it and to continue to live and to grow in who we are. And it will require a change. I don't want to adopt that phrase, that new normal, because I think people have heard that so many different times. I think we're finding out what that is, but what is good for us, however that's defined, however that's good for us, to continue in the safeguarding of our residents and our teammates and our community at large, but not to be held hostage by these restrictions. So we're continuing to work through it. We don't have an answer right now because it's continuing to change, but we're going to stay in communication. Our teammates are considered one of the higher risk populations for psychological adverse outcomes. Why? Because certainly potentially high risk for exposure, the sudden increase but very prolonged work hours that are necessary with everything that's being done. And there are ethical and emotionally taxing decision-making that's taking place. Decision-making that is shaped by social media and by policy and by fear and misinformation. So it's everything. And that can't be understated. And so we really want to make sure that we are paying attention to that, not only the impact that this has had on our residents and their daily lives, but the teammates that are there and continue to be in service to them. We have to, as a community, continue to shed light on the mental health and well-being of our whole community, and that is our residents, our family members, our teammates, our volunteers, our vendors, everything that makes the Wesleyan a community. And social media has really not helped a great bit. Actually, it's considered to be kind of one of the more negative contributors to that psychosocial impact that we've seen. There's not only is there the breadth of information, almost an information overload, but there's also interpretation and misinformation and fear-mongering and negativity, and this person versus that person has created a significant amount of contentiousness. And I know that you know about all these things. But what we want to hope, the message we want to send is one, instead of divisiveness, one of connectedness. Instead of one of anxiety, is one of hopefulness, that we will continue to stay engaged, but find our way to live through it. And one of the residents had sent me a Bible verse this past week that I thought applies. It's James chapter 1, verse 4. Let perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. And I've been proud of how the Wesleyan continues to stay engaged. And those are some of the things I do want to share with you, that during this time, we've added 6 new Board of Trustees to our board, connections within our community and our denomination, or both, that are very excited to be a part of the Wesleyan ministry in these next chapters that we're living through. That configuration of our board has been well established since the mid-50s, since our earliest articles of incorporation. We have members that are representative, that are members connected and affiliated with the Central Texas Conference of the United Methodist Church, but also representatives from other denominations. And that, we feel, is something that makes us extremely strong, because that's representative of all of you, not just the same denomination, but clients and patients and residents and teammates that come from various backgrounds. We've not been able to host our board members here on campus, at least in large groups, but we hope to do that soon. But the committee work continues. A lot of the work is done in committee, and then they're brought to the overall board. I cannot say enough, and I do want to take this moment to say how thankful I am to our Board of Trustees, who continue to make themselves available, whether it's in person or remotely. I am in communication with our board chair weekly. He was in the hospital for a procedure this week, and he was texting me from his hospital bed, because he doesn't want to stay disconnected with the ministry that's going on. But all of our members continue to stay with us hand in hand in the walk of this ministry. I think it's important that our teammates stay connected, and so one of the things that was a change for us when I first came on, but remains to this day, is the opportunity for our leadership, our administrators, to be able to share both the accomplishments and the challenges of their communities, and they with the board members directly, and they got to do this. And I want to share you some of those items. You'll be proud that the incredible job that our assisted living staff did in their deficiency-free survey. Those are hard-earned and rare accomplishments. Absolutely, those deficiency-free surveys are through the efforts of our frontline teammates and our residents. What our residents share with the surveyors, their appreciation of staff, what their community is like, how their services are provided, and things that can improve. Those are the things that shape who we are. And that kind of real interaction with the survey team led to a deficiency-free survey. And let me tell you, there are not a lot of facilities that are getting those, certainly through a pandemic, but under normal circumstances, they really are rare. And at a time that we are and have and continue to see absolutely nearly daily increased regulatory guidelines and restrictions. So that you know, because it's the community that you're involved in, we had a deficiency-free survey over at WSN, our skilled nursing facility, with very similar efforts. Thankful for them for the work that they're doing, and that building was a recent addition to our community from 2019. We had it. We didn't even have it 3 months before we went into COVID-19. That facility was acquired from a for-profit entity, of course, is now nonprofit and faith-based. That facility was a 1-star building and is now, we're very proud, is a 5-star building. And again, those are the efforts and the commitment of our family members, our residents, and our teammates. We're continuing to see a lot of activity. We did have a census reduction in our community Not what others experience, but unusual for us. But I always want to point out Jennifer Parker at our assisted living and her team, Christy Schuler over at Independent Living, Yoli over at Home and Community-Based Services, and Maricela over at Skilled Nursing. Everybody who continues to represent our community throughout, Holly Howland in marketing. Of course, Georgianne is one of the spokespersons for our community, but even in their operational roles, Bethany and Kelly, their communication and how they can be relied upon by our constituency, our community, continues to help Census grow in the name of the Wesleyan, continue to be at the forefront of the minds of our community. We have Mamie Lister, who's our executive director, has continued to grow our home health, hospice, and personal assistant services programs. And so those are some wonderful things. But there are things that continue to stay that are both joys and concerns. I think you would agree that one of the most incredible assets of our organization is our teammates. We hear that every day from each of you. And our concern continues to be their health and well-being, and that of their own families. This is an incredibly difficult labor market, not just for the Wesleyan, for everybody. I'm an officer on their Chamber of Commerce. There isn't a single chamber member that doesn't have a sheet in their window that says, looking to hire. And that's been a challenge, not just here, but across our nation. And our teammates, the ones you see in front of you, but also our leadership, have been incredible advocates on your behalf and for our teammates to look at any number of different strategies that have been employed to not only to attract, but to retain teammates that are here. And I will say, I continue to be moved every year, more so in the last 2 years, and again this year, the absolute heartfelt message that comes from residents and their family members in the family Christmas gift that is given to this year. I mean, I have words for it, but they're really more emotions. This is the heartfelt giving and generosity of our residents and family members. That is not a common practice in organizations like ours, not at the level that you engage in. Yes, there are people that do these kind of gifts and individually for some people in other communities, but the Wesleyan's approach to make sure that everybody is recognized in that, because sometimes we don't see the young man or woman that's taking out the trash or repairing the air condenser, or I don't know anything about mechanics, doing plumbing things and doing the things that keep the lights going and keeping us connected to security and making sure not just that the meals are prepped well, but that the food, the raw food, is delivered or prepped, or that the dishes are washed, or they're doing the education and training to make sure those teammates are prepared for work. There are so many people that are involved that go unseen, and your gift and your recognition is able to be felt by them all. That is huge. Absolutely huge. I will tell you, as I proudly share that with colleagues of mine throughout the state, and selfishly, I've shared with them how they do that, because they've had it at the superficial level, but they've not had it at that deep level. Their efforts impact true frontline teammates, and it is incredible gift. I do also want to say, because this is a question that comes up, that gift that you give, that is not instead of or a substitute to the gift the Wesleyan gives. This is in addition to. And so that has, I hope you to understand, has such greater impact. The Wesleyan, through the generosity and the understanding of our Board of Trustees, we do a Christmas gift for our teammates throughout. But this gift that you contribute to, this is over and above, and something special that our teammates are able to enjoy. So thank you. I thank you is not enough, but thank you. And it is an incredible, continues to have an incredible impact. And we'll share that. We do a separate town hall for our teammates, and we'll make sure that they hear that and they know that. We send out communications so that they're aware of that, but we just wanted you to be aware as well. And, again, speaking on behalf of the heart of our residents and teammates, Over 99% of our residents are vaccinated. That number changes a little bit, vacillates, because we have new people that come in and it takes a while, or sometimes they have to wait for medical reasons, but that is a strong representation because of your commitment to the community. 93% of our teammate population is fully vaccinated. That's huge. When you're seeing a healthcare national numbers in the upper 60%, sometimes getting to the low 70 percentile, having 93% fully vaccinated is huge, and speaks to their wanting to protect and safeguard not only themselves, their families, but also each one of you. We do have teammates that fall under medical or religious exemptions, but continue to follow those things that safeguard who they are. And while no efforts are perfect, that adherence to those infection control practices has really been something that's been exemplary for our community. Our Board of Trustees have reviewed our budget with additional supportive information. They have approved that budget. We do receive federal and state funding, which means that we are able to receive provider relief funds and ARPA funds from the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021. I think as a good steward of what we receive, while we do find ourselves the opportunity to avail ourselves of those dollars, we don't budget for them. The responsible thing is to be a sound business organization, and then when we receive gifts, and we do see these provider relief funds, these ARPA funds as gifts, those are not recurring financial dollars. Those stimulus dollars are not counted on routinely, and so we treasure them as gifts, but we don't count on them operationally. And so we are continued to commit ourselves to being strong stewards of the resources that we have. And so I'm going to stop there because that's a lot of information. That is really just kind of the tip top of the things that are happening on a day-to-day basis. So, I will say that that's not me. That's the wonderful people that you see on screen that I get to work with. Those are the wonderful teammates that you see each and every day that make those things possible. The gift that I get is to be able to support them in their the wonderful gifts that they bring to this ministry. So with that, Jennifer, if there are some questions, I would be happy to answer any questions. I may have to present them to some others, but I'll put it back to you.
Do either of you have any questions?
Well, we understand that the financial situation is flexible at this point and up in the air, yeah. So what impact would that have on us down the road?
That's a great question. I appreciate you asking. And so, a couple of things. As we look back at last year, the financial upheaval and instability of the markets, of people's investments and all, this community, this leadership went to the board with advocacy for not making any adjustments financially because we just didn't know what the impact was going to be. We did the exact same thing this year. What are the needs of the organization and how are things changed? For us this year, this has been an increase, and it was actually a sizable increase compared to prior years. Since coming on, what I will tell you, I know there have been flat increases in the past. Each year, we've taken a different approach. We look at what it takes to bring in the quality teammates, the supplies, everything that it needs to be continue to be a high quality organization. In years past, we've been able to control those costs. This year, it's changed. We've had increased costs in health insurance and, of course, labor costs and supply costs, supply chain. So the most immediate impact were rate increases. That has also required the organization to go back and adjust things that they expend, things that have been of benefit to us as an organization that we may have to do without, we've had to do without. So those are kind of the immediate, kind of overarching changes. What I would say is, when people say, okay, well, again, there's some provider relief funds, there might be some rescue plan dollars that are coming in, that is true. we don't know what they are. And I think the responsible thing as an organization is not to count those chickens before they're hatched. When we see those dollars, if that provides a respite and we're able to recover that and bring some other things back in, we will do that. But until those dollars are here, we shouldn't count on them. I know communities who have budgeted for those dollars that are leveraging growth and expansion from those dollars. We don't take that approach. We have a more conservative approach, and I think as we enter 60 years, that's been the signature of the organization, is to grow and to expand and to when we can evolve and grow appropriately, we do. This is not a time for that. That doesn't mean there aren't expansion opportunities, that there isn't renovation and things that need to be done, because those things are priority. So I think we're likely to have another conversation throughout this year that when we do receive supportive dollars, about how those things will be taken care of. I would say that from a financial priority, obviously the health and well-being through infection control practices, supplies and such for our residents, teammates, and family members are a priority. Obviously the approaching labor, retention of our solid teammates, that's absolutely a priority. And maintaining the quality standards of performance from a regulatory standpoint. As a person who's been in this industry for 28 years, and my colleagues have been in that in institutions for many years as well, that to see organizations go to the wayside, to have to sell off, to compromise their quality in these times, that is a tough thing to see, but those are the business decisions they're making. So, as we focus on those focus items I talked about, we're not going to compromise in those areas. It's just we have to continue to be creative. I would not envision any change in rates beyond our annual change in rates. Of course, that depends on where things go, but that's not the expectation. But we're going to be focusing on the continued security of the community and to make sure that this is a place that people want to come to work to provide the care that we need. So those will be our focus items. Other than that, economically, things behind the scenes, we're working with group purchasing organizations and negotiating new contracts and all of those things are a constant process for us, but very much so in light of the economic impact that everybody is seeing.
Let me ask another question, if I may. In view of the, what should I say, precarious or unstable future of the United Methodist Church, what are our connections with the Central Texas Conference going to look like in the future? I know you can't predict that, but what preparations are you making for?
If I could predict it, I would be buying lottery tickets for everybody. But you know what? I want to say I really appreciate these questions because these really do speak to the heart of who we are. So let me answer this in a couple of different ways. Whatever happens within the Central Texas Conference, the United Methodist Church, the United Methodist Church at large, that is not going to fundamentally change the ministry of the Wesleyan. The Wesleyan has been committed to this evolving sense of creating abundant life and care for and defined in different ways. The less fortunate, those in need, those that are alone, those that need assistance, however that is defined. And that's going to continue to evolve in definition. That's not going to change. That is the core of who we are. And our current bishop, our incoming bishop, our district superintendent, our senior pastors, as we, those are ex officio, the chairwoman of the UMW, and all those things that are part of who we are, that's not going to change. But to your point, what does change? What I would anticipate changing is there could be there's likely configuration changes. So for instance, the Wesleyan as a 501c3 is received that through its covenantal affiliation with the Central Texas Conference. All that would require, we may be required to whatever that new office looks like or how it's defined, or maybe on our own, but that's not going to change. And then our Board of Trustees are committed to those things really regardless. Now we've talked to the conference, we've, to kind of anticipate what it is. The decision was made to the Wesleyan, your core ministry and what you do isn't changing regardless of their changes. And so we're staying to see what happens. So, legally, probably you would see in documents where it said the Wesleyan and the Central Texas Conference, if it's called, the Wesleyan Methodist Conference or the new conference or no conference, and it's called something else, we'll see those documents and there'll be necessary legal work for those things to change. But our stewardship of what we're doing, not going to change. Our message to all communities of faith and communities that are outside the denomination, not going to change. Outside of the Wesleyan is here to serve you in your times, whether it's now or in the future, and that our focus is to serve those we serve and to serve those we serve with. So that's really not going to change. And so I don't even anticipate that part of it being a struggle at all. I think even those people, if you were to say you look at that group that exists and maybe there are 2 parties or 3 parties or other parties that are, I think if you were to ask those people, those that truly know us, they would say, yes, while things may change with us, the Wesleyans can continue to stay committed to who they are. So I do think that what we need to do is stay in communication about what changes take place and reassure people that our ministry is not going to change, because a lot of where we've gotten to have been through the struggles and the changes of people that have come before us. And so we don't want to lose that heritage, because that's a part of who we are today. But we just have to find a way to take that heritage, marry it into who we are, and then find out what our next chapter is. So I hope that provides reassurance to people. We're going to continue to open our arms, as the Methodist Church has always done, to everybody and anyone. And that's because that's what we're called. And this Christ-like ministry is to receive people and do His work here on earth. And the Wesleyan's a great expression of that, and that's not going to change. Anybody else want to add to that or have any other questions in relation to that?
I would like to make a comment.
Sure.
I have been a resident here in assisted living from the beginning. I was one of the first to move in when this building was built, and I've been through many changes in administration several times. I would like to comment first that my family and I are so grateful that I am in this institution. We looked at several opportunities. We were choosing a place for me to go. And Wesleyan had the best reputation and has come through every time. I feel very safe here. I feel at home. It's been maintained, a lovely building. We keep it clean. And we have good staff that love us and take care of us. And speaking of administration, right now we are kind of on tenterhooks as to what's going to happen, because like I said, I've been through several different changes in administration, and we're so fortunate we had Kelly to come in and take over temporarily. And my request is, please let us keep Kelly as our administrator. That's my message.
Well, let me
I'll add to it. I'm so impressed with the staff and caring that they have for us. We have human beings, and occasionally they're slip-ups. But 99% of the time, everybody just is lovely and caring, and I'm really impressed by that.
Well, thank you. Going all the way back to those comments, from the very beginning, what I would say, number one is you both have a future in marketing in our organization. But in all seriousness, it is. You have to know that it's an honor and privilege for us too. This is. I know there are more people who represent who we are, but the ability to connect like this is very important. I was driving earlier through the campus today. My daughter is with me because she's here with her school doing volunteer work. And and one of the children said, after they met different people, they're like, this is not what I was expecting. And I said, well, what were you expecting? Like, well, they weren't really sure. And they were 14. And so many people said that this was their home, welcome to their home. But it doesn't look like my house at home. But then when I came in, it did. We have a fish tank at home. And they said, oh, there's a fish tank. And they said, oh, we have their dining room's bigger, But each person who talked about it, it wasn't about how the building looked. It was about how they were received by the residents that were there. That the expression of home came from the people that they encountered. So I'm honored and privileged by that, and I know all of our team is. Change. If there is one consistency, one constant in what we do, it is the inconsistency of the world that we live in. It's probably one of the greatest ongoing contradictions in this ministry, in this industry, in this world in which we work and we live. We too would like to not see change, and as you're aware, that is sometimes the things that come with life. We are thankful that Kelly, who has her foundations from that building, probably literally, but to be able to be there. Kelly has never been away from that building, but of course, what you love about her so much, we have the opportunity to spread out through others. What a lot of people don't realize is Kelly was one of those unusual human beings who has like 36 hours in her normal 24-hour day, and works very hard. I would be remiss to commit her for the long term because I think a lot of other people would be upset. But what I do know is Bethany and Kelly and the team that's there want this transition to be a good transition. We'll stay connected with you. We'll stay in communication with you once you're involved in that. And then this building continues to be very much at the heart of the staff because of the longevity that's there. And so no pressure, Kelly. I think they're just asking for it to be perfect. So that's fine. That's all you have to do. But I appreciate that. And I think Kelly would agree with me that when you get to work with good people who care about what they do, not only does it make work a joy, but it makes the hard work easier. Not less hard, maybe just more enjoyable, because they realize they get to see the immediate impact of their smiles, the work of their hands in the residents every day. So I appreciate that. I appreciate those comments. There are so many people involved. I don't think I've ever seen Jennifer Parker not smile. Very contagious smile, and I know that it's a tight-knit group there. And through this transition, I know the teammates will rely upon you, their family, to help them in that change too, as you have helped them through this. And I'll go back to there again too. I will say many of our teammates have expressed one of the reasons why they've been able to make it through these challenging times is because of the appreciation and love and support they've received from the residents and the family members, teammates who said they've received messages and cards and phone calls or texts, just checking on them to see how they're doing and remembering, personal issues they've had to go through. That again also speaks very highly for this community at large. What other questions or comments or anything else that we'd like to share today?
Nothing else today.
Do you have any comment about your plans for infrastructure advancement, new buildings, that sort of thing?
Sure. Generally speaking, one of the things when you share things in large meetings like this, politically I've learned to shy away from specific dates because there's one thing I can absolutely guarantee you is whatever date I use, it will be wrong. So if I give a date, you can assume it's some other date other than that. But overall, the Wesleyan has been very blessed. We started off a smaller plot of property. We were at 40 acres. Now we're coming at 60 acres. I think it's really nice because it has a great synergy with the fact that we're coming into our 60th anniversary. I love that fact. There are a couple of things that are more imminent than others. We do have our oldest building on campus is our Independent Living West. We're about to step into a renovation for that the first part of this next year. Something that you guys might see outside the door is we have been told by the city that the construction for the light, the traffic light, at Bell Crossing and Williams Drive is to begin in May of this coming year, May 2022. Now, I'm only giving you that month because David Morgan, the city manager, used that. So if they doesn't happen in May, that's his fault. But I know, but it was priority number 2. I want to tell you, Councilman Pitts, Councilman Fout, they really absolutely 100% went out in advocacy on behalf of the residents of the Wesleyan and really championed that during those meetings, as did others. But you know, they really, that was important to them. So that's coming in. I know our family members will be excited about that. I know anybody who ever wants to turn left out of our community will be excited about that. I started turning left out of the community 2 days ago, and I just decided, forget it, I just loop around.
We always say that once you get on Williams Drive, you're halfway there, wherever you're going.
Well, I had one family member tell us that we're a little bit like the Hotel California, that once you come in, you can never leave. And I'm like, well, you can, but you have to choose to go right. You have to go westbound. I think that's westbound. Anyway. So anyway, that's coming in. We do have other land. And so what does that mean? We see strategically, we certainly see some expansion for our cottages. We see some expansion for our assisted living. We see some renovation coming for our assisted living. Probably some remodeling and renovation. In addition, you know, we don't have a chapel over at our Wesleyan Skilled Nursing and Rehab, and that's something that's part of who we are. We think that's important. I think that there was, we've had some residents talk about wanting to expand library areas and other things. We're looking at a number of different things. One of the things as we talk about caring for our teammates there are ways other organizations approach it. And one very, very unique way is workforce housing. Making affordable housing for teammates to live closer so that they can afford to live in town and work close to the ministry they care for. That could be something that we could look at. One of the things we do want to be careful about, whatever we really settle down to, is we are adamant about keeping the green space. We don't want to be, and let's be honest, we've got competitors out there, and that's great. You know, competition's always good and healthy, and that's fine. But we don't want to be another one of those buildings out there that's a shoebox on a major street that looks like every other community, which our competitors do. What's different about us is we're a neighborhood. You can drive, you can see water features, you can do walking trails, and there are herds of deer. Now, deer is not a rare sighting in Georgetown, but there are deer and other things. We want to keep that neighborhood feel, and some of the acquisition of growth of that property is to allow for growth without overcrowding. I don't want to lose the trees, the heritage trees, and that neighborhood feel. And so that has been communicated to our developers, our design people, that whatever we do, part of who we are as a community in health and wellness is that environmental wellness of being able to go out into. And so when we see growth, one of the things that's coming up is more signage with greater lighting so that we get better lighting at night so people can enjoy the community outside and enjoy those trails and be able to see the illumination of our community, but keep that sense of nature. So it's a balance that's going to be maintained, but that's something we're committed to. There are other projects, you know, the expansion of it is whatever we do is to help expand on the ministries that are here. Expanding on our hospice and our home health services is important. Educating the community, but growth is great, and I'm glad that we have the opportunity, but it also needs to be measured growth at the right time. We had some development that was about to take place when COVID-19 hit, and then construction costs went up about 4 times as much. And you know, when projects, I saw a project in Dallas that went from $278 million to $356 million, and they had to reduce what they were doing and the scope of what they were building, but pay that much more money. it requires us to be good stewards of our resources, even in construction. So we just want to find the right time to enter it as well, but not miss the opportunity to serve the people we're here to serve. Any other questions or comments?
Thanks for the opportunity to communicate.
Yes, we appreciate your leadership.
Well, it's my pleasure, and I do want to say, for those who, I know there are people who are maybe watching it now, they're going to watch it recorded later. This is never the only time for questions, and I know many of you know that. We have great dialogue with our family members, with our residents, with our teammates. I know Kelly and the team there, is open to receive those questions. This is your home and your community, and I also want you to know there is a little piece of everybody's heart that's missing, not being able to be with everyone like they are. Believe me, I would rather be standing at the podium in our dining room talking in front of you than behind the camera, although it looks as if I'm standing out in front of your building. Although I will, just for the sake of transparency, I will actually let you know where I am. Here is my office. It's relatively clean. There I am. So, but part of what we get, the gift that we get out of this, is being with you, and that some of that's been taken away. But we do long for that time to come back together. We also know that's how we work together as a community. When there are challenges, concerns, and issues, being with each other is a far more constructive way to manage it. And so we're working for that. We hope and we pray for that. We ask you to join us in our prayers for that time. So with that, any questions or things that were not answered during this time, we ask you to reach out to us. We know that this will be posted for some time to come for people to be able to access. Thank you so much for taking the time to answer questions. Your questions were excellent. In addition to the compliments, the really important questions I think were asked. So thank you, and happy holidays to everybody.
Amen.
Bye now.